Okay, this is a game in the AMX 1390, the Tier 8 French light tank on Prokhorovka. And what we're going to talk about a little bit is playing Prokhorovka. But mostly what we're going to talk about here is teamwork in a platoon and how you attack into areas and how you work together. And so, you know, particularly in this particular platoon, we have a medium, a tank destroyer, and a light tank. Sometimes you have similar tanks, sometimes you have varied tanks. In this particular case, they're varied tanks. So when you have varied tanks, you typically don't necessarily want to have everybody in the same place, but you want to have some sort of overlapping spheres of influence where you can help each other out and work towards a common goal. And because I'm in a light tank on Prokhorovka, and unfortunately there's no RD, but what I'm going to try to do initially is get some early spots so we can get an idea of where their team is headed, how many guys are headed over to this east side, and which tanks are they. And that's going to help us make our decisions on what else is going to be, where we're going to shift to. And so they have a couple of their light tanks in the middle, and so we got looked off a little bit, but we were able to see the heavies going over the tracks, and so that's some useful intel. When you look at our dispersion, we've got a couple guys on the 6 line, both in the back sniping and in the front essentially spotting. We've got a couple of guys IS-6 T-32 coming this way, so we'll go and play this 0-line hill area. They have a T-54 that's sort of pushing into here a little bit, and we want to prevent him from getting too far underneath here. And we see that their E-75 has also moved up at this point. And then now we're going to need to see what our heavies do. Our heavies are sitting back a little bit on this plane right there, which is not really that good of a place for them to be, but it's okay. And we can at least keep this E-75 a little bit honest, because if he turns his turret, we can pen side turret. Otherwise, it's going to be tough slogging for us to beat him with our standard AP shells, which I think are only 175 down. And then I just want to take a peek up here every so often to see if they send anything. Like, we know that the E-75 crossed, but we also know that the E-75 moved up the 8 line. But I want to see if there's anything else here. You can also shoot through the middle. There's a number of different bushes that you can spot from on this north side of this slope. I picked this one way over here because they have their E-75 T-54 over here. So if I get lit, it would be really easy for them to shoot me. But from where I'm at now, I can still spot the hill. But if I get lit, then the E-75 and the T-54 cannot shoot me, which is always a plus. And I can still shoot at these guys on the 6 line, however poorly. And so we see that they're playing through this area right here in the middle. They're basically in the 4, 5, 6, 7. They've got a lot of their high tier, the tier 9 tanks up front. And so that's something that we are keeping an eye on. Bouncing on the T-54, not a good sign, but happens. So their E-75 is still in the same position, but their T-54 is now back down a little bit. They still got some guys in the middle. I'm in the middle of a reload. Our T-32 is now coming up this 0 line. The IS-6 is still in this area, so we'll keep an eye on that. I just don't want him to get pushed by the E-75. And then we see that they have a T-32 up here. And he shoots my gun a little bit. I didn't realize that my gun was that far over the ridge, but it's fine. And then all I need to do is get low here, because I know that I have Miz and Blue behind me. As long as this guy's lit, they'll have good shots on him. So it's just a matter of time. So I'm just watching to make sure that this guy stays lit, and as long as he does, those guys will be able to take care of that. And then I can see that their T-54 is pushing in here a little bit. Again, this is fine. You know, I've got a lot of backup over here. Both Blue and his Roomba and the JT are over there. I was going to go to flank this T-54, but then I see the E-75 coming in, and I can't frontally take on that E-75. Blue starts pecking away at him, though. I need to create some separation between me and the E-75 in case he decides to push me. But Blue is able to get 2 good shots on him, which takes him down pretty low. And then now what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to close on him. I see that he just fired at the IS-6, so I know that he's going to be in a reload.
It's a trap!
Yeah, let's just get to the side and finish him off. And then in this time, we've sort of lost this fieldish area over here. We still have a little bit of control on that 5-6 line because Blue and the JT can help Miz out, who's in that 6 line, the south side of that 6 line over there. And so that's most of their tanks that are in this field area, so we need to be able to figure out how we can keep these guys from coming over on Miz, because as these guys go more and more forward over here, they're going to get better shots on into his area over there, especially if they go up this hill. They'll have an area from which they can shoot at him. And that's just poor shooting by me. I should have probably been able to kill that T-54 lightweight. And then I just want to see if there's anybody sitting out over here, because they do still have a lot of tank destroyers, and only the JP2 is unaccounted for. But I don't see anything, so I'll start my reload. And then what happens in a configuration like this, and you'll see this a lot in tournament play, once it becomes a sort of east-west confrontation, you'll play the railroad crossings. So I'm going to go to the south crossing, and then if Miz lights this Conqueror or anything on this 2 line, then I'll be able to shoot it from down here. So that's what we're gonna look to do. And so right now we're still pretty far separated, but you know we're fairly overlapping in our spheres of influences. Blue can cover Miz can light for me. I'm a little bit more on an island, but I'm fast enough that these guys aren't really going to be able to push me. And my entire idea here is to not get lit, so I'm going to fire through this bush at this Conqueror. But he's backing down this hill now, so I'm not going to get very many more shots. And he's going to know where that shot came from, so he can turn around, and if he moves up along this ridge line, he can light me. So I can't sit out here, because otherwise their tank destroyers can then shoot me from the back. Their T-30s are pushing over on this side anyways, and so basically what Miz is trying to do is keep these guys honest for our guys to be able to snipe. And then, so if anything, what we've been able to do with that shot is get this Conqueror to back off a little bit. Maybe he'll come down here and look for us, which will take some pressure off of Miz. Because the biggest problem for Miz in this case would be somebody coming over on top of him on the 6 line, which would basically light him and then allow the T-30s to fire. And then, so here's where teamwork is really important. It's a lot of this game to this point has been just relatively freelancing, but at this point now is when you need to actually start moving the pieces around the chessboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to move Blue down to this area over here, to this south crossing, and we're going to leave me in the middle. And so what that really allows us to do is that allows us to separate our actual firepower. You know, Miz has a decent gun and Blue has got a really good gun, and so what we want to be able to do is spot through either side, whichever side they decide to go to, and be able to shoot. So with me playing in the middle, I can essentially light most of these guys out here from a position without a whole lot of cover, without a whole lot of bushes, just because I'm in a light tank, so I can outspot them. Whereas Miz is really dependent upon this hill over here. In Blue's tank, he's really more dependent on being at range from these guys than not. And as these T-30s get closer, they're going to get easier and easier shots on Blue if he stays there. And then so we see that as Miz is able to light this guy, or maybe the JT let him, but we'll be able to get shots to cover if they're far enough away like that. And then, so now what we want to be able to do is just figure out where they are, right? These guys haven't moved in a little while. I know that they haven't crossed through the middle, really. And so we're able to pick up this guy over here. I don't know if that was Blue or me that spotted him. So we know that the Conqueror is shifting over towards Blue's position. What we see is this T-30 is also shifting over towards Blue's position, right? So Blue gets a shot off on him, which is fantastic. Now, what's this means is that they've got 4 tanks left, right? And they've shifted 2 of them south. But Blue's in a relatively safe position. As long he doesn't need to keep poking up there, he just needs to keep them honest to keep them from charging him in a sense. And so what that's done is that's left this north side more vulnerable. And so what Miz and I are going to do is we're going to go tag team it. We're going to push through here, see if we can find the 704 or the JP2, whichever one or both of which have moved up here, and see if we can take them down. We still have a reasonable amount of health. You know, we're potentially one shot for the 704, but we know that the Conqueror and the T30 are not going to be able to help. And so we're able to pick up the JP2, and he's all the way over here. And so we haven't been lit yet, so we know that the 704 is probably west of the 2 line, and either that or south of the F line, because he wasn't able to pick us up at all. Well, not entirely a efficient clip, but good enough. So we took out one tank, and we know that the 704 is still over here. So now we need to actually flex. So Miz said that he got lit. We need to actually flex out of here, because when they see both of us up here, they might be tempted to push blue. And so that's something that we're going to see if we can flex to defend against, right? So Miz comes up here through this middle, and he's going to basically poke out over here to see if the 704 lights him, and he'll be able to take out that T30 that gets lit in that middle area. And then I'm just flexing back to my original position, which is essentially back in this middle area to cover them over here. And the 704 does get a shot off on Miz. And so we know that the Conqueror is somewhere on this 5-6 line, so blue is set up over here, so I'm just going to push in behind. And blue's able to take him out relatively easily. And then now, so I'm potentially one shot by the 704. Miz is definitely one shot by the 704, and blue still has some health, but he's not going to really be the pusher. So Miz is going to make a run here. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to coordinate and go together. But I'm going to move towards blue because the 704 can only kill one of us. As long as I stay close to blue, even if the 704 kills one of us, the other one should be able to get him. And we know that he's somewhere on this west, probably on the 1-ish line. And so Miz is able to get behind him. And then that's pretty much the ballgame. And so a lot of this game, you know, we started out playing this Prokhorovka game. It was pretty straightforward, right? You do the early spot, figure out what's there. You start to deal with the tanks that they have. They didn't really send too much to the hill early on, but they did have a lot of tier 9s on this sort of F line here, you know, all the way from F4 to F8, you know, between the Conqueror and the E75 and the T54 that were over here. And so you start to deal with those little pockets as you can. And the nice thing about owning this 0 line is that it's relatively easy to light into here, although most of these guys are lit most of the time by either our T32 or the IS6 that was over here. And that really allowed blue and the JT that were back here to get pretty good shots into them. And then once they eventually had a lot of weight out on this field side, right? They had a lot of their tank destroyers, and they were able to push in through this west side and clear it. But they cleared it about the same time that we cleared this east side. And what that allows us to do is it allows our team to shift over to this side of the railroad tracks, and then it goes from being this sort of north-south confrontation into this east-west confrontation. And when it flips like that, then playing these railroad crossings becomes really profitable, where you play this B6 area, this sort of E6 area, and like this J7 area, and you can get shots into different areas. And then, you know, it's about exploiting different strengths of the tanks that you're playing, right? You know, we shifted blue down to the south, so that, you know, because he wasn't going to be as effective poking over in this B6 area, because he was going to be lit by the guys that were over here. Move him to some place where he can be a little bit more effective, and make sure that you have these overlapping spheres of influence so that you know, you're as platoon mates, you can cover each other. And whereas, like, if we were all in T-54s, we might want to be a little bit more clustered, or at least have 2 clustered and 1 cover, sort of thing. In this sort of configuration that we had with a light, a medium, and a tank destroyer, you want to be a little bit more spread out and be sure that you can cover each other and still be in an area where you can be reasonably effective, either in lighting. You know, a large part of our victory was map control, right? This sort of idea that we had lanes of vision across all of the key points of the map. So when that Conqueror pushed south, when that T-30 pushed south, right, we know that they did that, and we can flex. You know, Miz and I can flex through this north side, knowing that that Conqueror and that T-30 are out of play, which allows us to push this side, right? And we know that those guys are not fast enough to push over to where Blue is, even though they know Blue is there because he shot the T-30. And so having map control, or at least, you know, vision control over those lanes, it becomes really important for how you make your decisions on where to push. And so if we look at the stats, it worked out pretty much as you would have thought. So both Blue and that JT that were on that 6 line, the back of the 6 line, were able to do a lot of damage. That JT stayed in that B6 for probably a little bit too long. He could have come over towards the middle, kind of where I was in that B5, B6 area. You can kind of haul down and at those railroad tracks, and that's something that he could have done in his JT. So he spent a little bit too long in that B6 area, which allowed them to basically get into a range where they could spot him, and, you know, the object and the T-30 and the other things that were on the 2 line could shoot him. And so the responsible thing, of course, is to be able to flex out of areas and, you know, still have reasonable coverage. Like Miz was still able to cover through that 6 line, and I was still able to get a reasonable amount of coverage of his back to prevent him from being flanked or pushed over by that Conqueror or anything else that might potentially come through the middle. Let's see. So anyways, I hope that's something that you think about the next time you're in a platoon, and make sure that you work together. A lot of times, you know, when we do our replay reviews and things of that nature, I see people in platoons, but you don't always have to work together. But particularly when it gets down to crunch time, it's really important to communicate what goals you want to achieve and how you can each contribute to achieving that. So I hope that was useful for teamwork in general, and thanks for watching.